welcome to the first actual video podcast. So this is going to be, at least on my end, very awkward. I don't know where to look. I've already directed and talked about a bunch of stuff like don't look here, don't look there, and I'm doing all of it right now just to get it out of the way. I'm looking at the wrong camera on purpose, just so that I know that I'm doing it wrong. Anyway, this is just a first go at it, and we'll see how it goes. This isn't our studio either, so
yeah, in very NP fashion as me. By the way, I'm James.
Yep.
I am the most relevant fact about us right now, it feels, as we've been discussing so much, is our MBTI personality type. So I'm James, and I'm an INTP. And let's introduce first, and then talk a little bit about how we got here. So,
thank you. We were actually discussing before this the reason why, or rather, I said I wanted to have an intro. I didn't explain well the reason, and this is the exact reason. I will forget to tell you who I am. I will forget who I am, and yeah, it'll go like as it's going now, and I'll stumble over my words.
Mm-hmm.
This is me needing order to chaos. So without further ado, I am Derek of Derek and James, or James and Derek, or 2 of 16, however you want to look at it. And yeah, we talk about MBTI stuff. And
yes, cool. MBTI is the most relevant topic for us right now. James, Derek, INTP, INTJ, and in a very INTP fashion, actually, we were exploring the area of Gangnam, this area, and we stumbled upon Take One Studio here, who has set up a studio that we can try, and that's why we want to try a video podcast today. Yes. So the topic did you?
I was just gonna say it's a temporary solution because yeah, why not? I mean, it was the story behind how we got here. Maybe we'll tell another time. Like it was so random, and it was like it almost didn't make sense because
serendipity.
Yes, and anyway, we're trying it out because we're looking possibly to make our own studio later. So we'll see how this goes.
Great. Okay, so today I'd like to focus on something that I think is very relevant for both of us right now, is inferior functions in MBTI. And one day I believe we will aim at reviewing all of the functions. But for now, let's just assume that you know, and we're going to talk about our inferior functions. And recent discoveries we found on how to work with them, how to manage them, how to live with them. My inferior function is extroverted feeling as an INTP, and Derek's is extroverted sensing. And I have a theory right now that actually a big reason why we'd want to look at it and deal with it is because it having such a large effect on us can interfere with our ability to be authentic. In my personal experience, what I recently realized is introverted feeling can hijack my thinking. As an INTP, the thing that I think is the most important in the world is logic. My own theories, my own maps, what I figured out about how to solve problems in the world. And if I get too far into extroverted feeling, which is considering how what I say is going to affect other people's emotions, is it gonna shock them? These things, it can make me too focused on other people instead of just saying what's gonna solve the problem. And Derek, I'd like to check in with you about recent times about extroverted sensing and your understandings of it. If there are any recent experiences you've noticed about it.
What I can definitely say right off the bat is for an INTJ like myself, when extroverted sensing is on, so if there's an on and off switch, if you will, it is a battery drain. The more I use it, the faster my energy is drained. So it's something that, for me, it's better to use sparingly, and it's not something that I can turn on and off myself, but I do somewhat have control over it. What do I mean? When I go outside, when I go out into a crowded place, when I am on the subway, especially when I go to a meeting and I meet people, those are the times when the extroverted sensing, which is being in the moment, matters most to me because I'm I dress a certain way, or I act a certain way, or I speak a certain way, and I suddenly become keenly aware of it. When I'm at home, I don't care, right? I don't. Nobody's there judging me, so to speak, or I'm not really worried about what I'm doing, my behavior. In fact, that's when I'm most myself, because I'm usually either thinking about something or visualizing something, or I'm getting work done. And when I'm getting work done, you know, that's it. That's all I'm thinking about is getting it done. However, when I'm out in the wild, when I'm getting work done, when I'm doing TE, extroverted thinking, when I'm executing my plan, there's this moment sometimes that happens. I guess you could call it flow, where, and I'm not speaking yet to the most recent interaction with SE, but
Sure.
basically SE will happen because it's in the moment type of situation. It's one of those things where I'm hyper focused, but I'm also suddenly become aware, like spidey sense, about everything that's going on around me. Now this is where it's working well. This is a positive side to it. But the negative side, if I may use this terminology, it's not that it's negative, but I would call it counterproductive, is, like I said, when I'm on the subway or something and I suddenly become very aware of something that I feel like I'm judging. It's like I'm judging myself from the outside through the eyes of the onlooker, which you could say is quite narcissistic because probably no one's looking at me, right? However, I do live in South Korea. We are obviously both in South Korea, so there is a higher chance as a foreign person to people that I'm looked at, and I'm used to that. But it doesn't mean that I still don't want to carry myself a certain way, and I don't want to behave a certain way. So I'm often very aware of that, and that is very tiring. And that happened yesterday. In fact, James and I, we went to a meet up rather, with a bunch of people. Is that what we're?
Oh yes. So okay, the it was actually supposed to be a small little like recent experience, but we can go that direction. So I'd like to just put a frame around what we're talking about now.
Super simple. Most recent experience. I got a haircut today, and my hairdresser called me an F. She thought I was a F type and not a T, not thinking type, and I was super surprised. So I immediately thought, am I projecting that type of persona? And I actually was, but fakely. When I speak Korean, I speak completely differently because I do a bit of mirroring, and apparently I've been speaking with people that are F types, or at least sound F types. So I was sort of chameleoning. I was acting like an F, I suppose. So that's why she thought that. I asked the stylist, why. Oh, I was very curious. Why do you think that? And she said, yeah, you just seem like the type of person who really speaks from the heart. Was, if I can translate it into very colloquial English. So that was a situation where I was very keenly aware of. Instantly.
So that's linked to SE.
Right.
Because
while I was when I'm getting my haircut, there's a huge mirror in front of me, so I'm constantly looking at myself. And SE for me is how I look to myself, and when I'm constantly seeing myself, I'm constantly judging how I look. Every movement, everything I do. I feel like honestly, SE becomes. I feel like people can read my thoughts even. Like, am I thinking a certain thing, and they know what I'm thinking? Obviously, that's impossible. But yeah, it just turns into a odd version of somewhat like paranoia. Yeah, but it's self-awareness. And it's like self-awareness 2.0, or like squared.
Okay.
I don't know how to explain it.
Okay. There are thoughts that come. Okay. Have you ever heard of the spotlight effect?
I have not. Well, I can guess what it means, but
okay.
No. Just for the sake of explaining.
Okay. Well, the spotlight effect is essentially the feeling that the spotlight is on you. Everyone can see what you're doing. They're watching your every movement. Is that somewhat like explaining what you feel?
Yeah, but you know what's really funny? There was a man somewhat behind me in another a chair, and he was constantly actually looking at me. So it's not all in my head. And this is what I think is for me, this is what's good about SE, because while it's tiresome, I feel like it's protective, and there's a lot of things we can go deeply into psychologically what that means, and I'm sure we're going to touch base on this a lot in further episodes, but I like it. I like knowing or feeling like I know what's going on around me, because then it helps me to just make my next move, so to speak. I mean, I feel very safe, if you will. I feel Because for me, what would be scary is not knowing what's going on. If it were a pitch black room, but I knew there was 10 people in the room, that would be horrible. Not scary horrible, but just not knowing what anybody's doing.
Okay, that is really interesting. Like as you described it right there, it helps me understand what this need is, what you're aiming to do as you SE, especially in unknown situations.
Exactly.
Well, that was intended to be an intro, but it's okay. Moving in, there's a theory that I was building about. There's a theory I was building about this inferior functions. I'd like to talk about that first, and then I'm going to talk about my experience with FE, which actually mirrors a lot about what you're saying, and then we'll go into your SE, and we'll see if there are any parallels.
Sure.
So the theory I'm building is all personality types, they have a first function. They have a hero function that they love, but they also have the fourth function, which is an inferior function. It's a source of uncertainty. It could be a source of fear, source of exposure. And what can end up happening is because of the fear, they can end up living by their inferior function. And this inferior function takes over. And my theory is when this happens, this can block your ability to truly be fully in your dominant function. So for me, what I feel is my gift to the world is introverted thinking and extroverted intuition, essentially exploring the world and solving problems. And for Derek here, it's introverted intuition, seeing the vision, and then executing on the plan for INTJs. And the realization that I'm exploring, and I'd like to share with you, is that really my job here on Earth is not to be an extroverted feeler. It's not to make people feel good. It is to be an INTP and solve problems. And one big breakthrough I think we can have is putting our fourth function in its place and saying, okay, yeah, I get it. For me, introverted feeling, like I would love for everyone to just like love me and feel good around me, but I'm not here for that. I'm here to solve problems and say the harsh truths. And perhaps for Derek, yes, you would love if first I said that, and I'd love to know your immediate reaction to it. We'll keep it short so that we can continue with the podcast.
I'll be honest with you, SE is like a secret weapon for me. Like, being an inferior function and looking at it as like, oh, when it happens, like, you could say theoretically there's a lot of, again, I'm going to use the word negative aspects to it, at least. For example, there have been people that tell me, why do you care? Why do you care what other people think? Why do you care how you look? You shouldn't care how you look. So it's either people asking me questions, which is fine. Questioning me is always okay, but telling me something I should do, that's a big no-no for INTJs, as you will learn through the process of watching us over time. But I'm speaking to you guys, not to him. He knows. Anyway, I like it. I like that it exists. I don't hide from it. In fact, I just see it as I play a lot of video games, so I always think of video games, and it's like unlocking just temporarily a special secret weapon. So I like it. And hearing what you said, it's actually very interesting because we haven't really talked about your FE very much. So I wasn't aware that you wanted everyone to love you. I could put two and two together if I were to really think deeply about why it is you want. Why it is you don't say what you're thinking always, because you don't want to, someone to misunderstand you and to cause any kind of problems. So that is kind of theoretically probably connected. So, yeah, but to keep things short, I love it. I love SE.
Yeah, well, I mean, for example, perhaps in the future, maybe if you watch a future podcast, you might see me interrupting Derek more often, because one thing that is hard for me to do is to interrupt you, because I don't want to create that disharmony.
But I find that quite interesting, because I will struggle to get control back. So if you do interrupt me, you're more likely to have me then kick into gear, and I'll do everything I can not to allow it. So this will be quite an interesting dichotomy. Yeah, see, it's coming together, isn't it? I mean, and I want to speak to that as well. I personally feel like I don't want to do things in order to try things out. So it sounds like you're trying to do something that isn't natural for you. And for me, I would rather people. What I mean is, do you get what I'm saying? I feel like I'm not saying right what I'm saying, but like I feel like that's not you, right? Saying, stopping someone in mid sentence, or interrupting or whatever, because you function in such a way that you don't want to create disharmony. So why would you? Let me pose the question: why would you want to do that?
So my thesis here is in the interest of my higher priorities, which is solving problems and getting the truth out.
Okay.
Like, hold on for a second, because I have something I really want to say here that I think can help all of us. So, as much as it hurts me to interrupt you, I'm gonna say it. I want to say this first, and then maybe all the discussion can end because there's some TI truth that I'm sharing.
See, when I hear that, I feel like that's you trying to replicate, or not replicate, rather, sorry, let me start over. When I say something, for example, when I have a plan set up, that's it. That's absolute. That means I already know the right way to go. At least that's my belief. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm not going to argue whether or not I'm right, but to me it's right. And to me also, there's no such thing as being wrong in that case. So if someone were to interject or to say, I've looked at your plan, or rather, I mean, finding flaws in my plan is okay. That is more acceptable than if I'm in the middle of executing and you stop me in the middle of executing, you're going to get your hand cut off, so to speak. This is well known. People who know INTJs, this is a well known fact.
Mm-hmm.
So, because what you say, there's no possibility in the mind of an INTJ. There's no possibility that what you're saying is right, because if anything that goes against what I'm already doing is wrong. Therefore, if you're saying, well, actually this, because you want to, how did you put it? You want it to stop there.
Well,
I mean, I guess I'm not really, this isn't the right example.
Yeah.
But do you get where I'm going with this?
Okay, sure. Let's zoom out. Because the theory that I'm sharing today is, if in order for me to be the fully authentic INTP, I should not follow FE, because if I follow FE, at the expense of my introverted feeling, my introverted sense, my introverted thinking, and my extroverted intuition. My introverted thinking and my extroverted intuition is what I'm all about, and if I put them subservient to extroverted feeling, then I'm not being myself, and that's what I've been exploring more and more. I'm gonna move into saying more about that, and then we can go back to SE.
Sounds good.
So, first, a quick intro to extroverted feeling for INTPs. It is my fourth function, and that means that it is something that I feel it's important, but I'm not very good at it. And naturally, as humans that are aspiring, we tend to take that as a sign that we should try and do it more and more, and we should get really good at it. And what that emerges as is I'm using it in a lot of times when I probably shouldn't. It becomes situations that are people pleasing. I get social anxiety. I feel overly concerned with how you're going to feel about me, right?
Oh, that begs a question.
Uh-huh.
I'll try not to interrupt.
Okay. Let me finish here. What I've come to discover is extroverted feeling can be both a strength and a weakness. Used properly, it can be the sugar to the medicine. It can be the spoonful of sugar for the harsh TI truth I'm going to tell you. But when it overtakes me, then I just become someone else. I don't become authentic. What would you like to say?
Yeah, when you mentioned, FE, which for me is very foreign already as it is. I'm only able to understand the things that you've told me about or that I've read about it. But I was going to ask, what about someone who, when you're FEing them, when you care about how they feel, and that person doesn't feel? That person's more of a thinker.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Ooh.
that's what I'm wondering, because when people FE me, it is received very differently depending on from whom it's coming, and what it's dependent upon the situation. But I would say in day-to-day tasks, day-to-day interactions with people, I'm unaware of it.
Yeah. I will say I've wasted so much time attempting to FE TE thinkers. Me thinking like, oh, if I help them like me, if I help them feel good about me, then maybe we'll work better together. However, it just doesn't work. That's what I've discovered recently. I've recently discovered all they want me to do is do the thing, and then they'll like me.
Yes.
But I kept on being like, okay, how can I do something so that they like me, so that if I don't do the thing, it's okay, but it's never okay. That's what I've discovered.
Now, keep in mind, I just want to reiterate, this is with TE people, so people like myself.
Yeah,
However, how does it work when you're doing it to people who are very open to FE?
Yeah, first of all, TE people are TJs. When people that are open to FE, they reciprocate. And they say, oh, you're 착해, 귀여워, like, what a good-mannered person, so cute. And then they want to help me. That is the FE world, the people with FE. But people with TE, they completely misunderstand and they say, why are you telling me this? And then they get angry that I didn't do the thing that they wanted me to do. So it's very interesting that it's a completely different dimension of life. And that's a big reason why I find MBTI so valuable. Quick comment about that, and then I'll do the next thing.
I had a comment. All I was doing is my point there was this is something that you have to know when and where to use it. So it is very useful in the cases where it's useful. But we were specifically talking about TE or TJ people with whom you've tried it on and it didn't work.
Oh, it didn't work.
So there's a time and a place. And I'm sure if I were to really think about it, there's a time and a place for my SE, so my inferior function. Whereas I suppose external sensing would be lost on certain people. Maybe other INTJs, or I'm not quite sure where. I'm less familiar with people and how they react to things because I tend to not really focus on people. So when I'm executing, when I'm doing my INTJ things, when I'm doing something with my TE, people become, I'm not going to apologize, but people become objects because it is objective. I'm trying to get to my goal. So how I get there is obviously I planned it out, but I'm not really stopping to smell the flowers or stopping to check in on, oh, how do you feel about this? It's more of, did you do the task I asked you to do? Or that it's not always just me giving out commands. Did you complete the task that you took on? So if I put it a different way, like this is the task you were responsible for.
Okay.
And so that's, kind of just the difference between, now I've lost myself, could you stop me? What?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I hear you.
Good example of interrupting TE there.
Yep.
I have no idea where I am.
Oh, I completely hear what you're saying. And that is the difference between FE and TE. And I was trying to withdraw from the bank that doesn't have my currency, to use an analogy. All right. So that's an example of using FE with a TE person. What I've seen is, yes, okay, to zoom in more on how FE has helped me in my life, I know very easily how to say, I've learned how to say harsh, when I was a kid, I used to say harsh truths just flat out, and then people would hate me and they'd get angry at me. I'd say, no, that's wrong, you're stupid. That's the way I'd say it. And then they would get angry, and then I'd get scared because I have FE. But what I've learned to do is say the harsh thing, but in such a way that the other person will not be offended or be angry. And so this helps a lot at work or with social situations where I say, oh, I'm not sure about that. What do you think about this? And that's the FE way to say the TI thing. I would like to quickly check in with Derek to see if you've noticed that me say those things before.
Can you give me another example? Or give me a specific example of what you've said that...
Oh. You share an opinion.
Yes.
And then I don't share my opinion of your opinion. Instead, I ask a question.
Yes. Okay, so sure, that is more effective with me because when I share my opinion on something, I really just want to hear. Well, frankly, yeah, ask questions. I don't know. Like, if you were to share your opinion against mine, I feel like we just clash.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but
So
it's also my responsibility, perhaps, if that were to happen, to. I mean, at that point in time, I would defend my opinion. So then I'd have to kick into gear. It's like, oh, he thinks that there's another option out there, and that's usually not acceptable because the reason why my opinion comes from what I see as fact, and therefore, if someone has an opposing opinion, then I must, you know, defend it to the death or
uh,
concede victory to the other opinion.
yeah.
And that is conflicting, that's all. Whereas if you ask questions, you could theoretically get to sharing your opinion through questions, which is very strategic, and I think that's very interesting.
Yeah. So uh, I think this is my FE, where I very much almost play judo when I'm talking, where when someone strongly shares an opinion, I step out of the way. And then after the opinion has passed through, I then uh, exert leverage on the weakest point of the opinion they just asked or they just shared, and I ask a question in a place where there is a weak point. I generally like to do that. I don't know if you notice, but I do that. I let the strength of this strong opinion come through. I do nothing. I let it pass through, and then I use an FETI response to reveal something about the opinion that perhaps the person has not thought about.
What would you do in a case where someone has stated their opinion and they expect an immediate response?
I don't give immediate responses. I can't. Or
What if it upsets the person that wants the response? They want to know immediately.
well, that happens.
Okay.
That happens, and that it just upsets them. That's happened before, and I say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't respond right away." And what I've learned to do better these days is very clearly respond that, because what I used to do was just go into my head and get quiet. But I think the best middle ground I've found is simply to answer, "Oh, I don't have the answer to that right now. I will think about it and I will respond to you tomorrow." Something like that.
A lot of if thens going through my conditional brain here. So I pose an opinion, you say something like that, I need to think about it, etc. Well, I would immediately no longer want to speak with you at that point because that means that you're not interested in what I'm saying or you are not the right person to be talking to.
What if I further soften it and I say, "That's a very interesting comment you just made, and I don't have an answer, but I'll think about it and I'll get back to you tomorrow."
I feel it depends on how awake that person is because I would hear that as BS, an avoidance. It's a very crafty avoidance. Someone who's less intelligent or less awake, I'm just using the word awake, like if they're just not paying attention, they might, or just maybe they just don't feel that strongly about their opinion to the point where they're like, okay, I'll accept your non-answer. I call those non-answers. Because when I state, I don't know that I'm sharing my opinion very often. I think I'm just sharing what I see as fact, so that requires a response. And so when I don't get a response, I call those non-answers. Non-answers are treated exactly like dead air to me. So if I say something and there's dead air, then I either immediately try to, how can I say, I try to, quote unquote, sort of fix the situation. It means I'm asking for something and I'm not getting it. So in order for me to get what I want, I either have to get it or not get it. It's all black and white. How I get there is what I have to rethink, but otherwise it needs to be immediately handled. So however you want to interpret that.
Yeah, I've experienced it. I've gotten I've gotten a lot better at responding to this. However, I would like to keep us focused on what we're talking about here, which is the inferior functions. So let's aim for that on a future podcast.
Yeah, it's interesting because while we are trying to focus on the inferior functions, those inferior functions are being interacted with by people's non-inferior functions. So that's why I'm going on these what looks like tangents, but it's not actually tangential to the conversation. It's the reaction of the listener or the other person to
Yes.
your FE or to my SE, which we haven't gotten to, but
Oh yeah. So I mean, to say a general statement, there is plenty of misunderstanding in the world, and people will misinterpret people's triggered inferior function to say a different word. Uh, Sometimes people attempt to get a response from a person's inferior function, and then they respond negatively, and the person who perhaps has that either doesn't have that function at all, or they have it higher in their stack, are like, oh, this is not a big deal, why are you responding like this? That happens all the time, and I think that's a big reason why MBTI can be so valuable, because it can help people understand, oh yes, I'm attempting to, I'm asking, to say it bluntly, I'm asking a child to act like an adult right now, and they can't really respond the way I want them to.
so a nice way to put that is we're discussing inferior functions today, but this is just us queuing up the more important stuff that we're going to be getting to later. Because while I'm not saying that this isn't important, I feel like what you just said is far more impactful and will be far more valuable. Now this is just me thinking it right now. Obviously, our goal is to get people in touch with their inferior feelings, maybe, or just understand it better. But I feel like it's everything's so interconnected that all of this is so important that we should explore every aspect of it, and we will. We will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think this is very valuable. And to get back to the main point I'm getting at here is when the inferior function takes over, what essentially happens is a person becomes inauthentic. That's the main point I'd like to get at. Now, feeling as a weakness for me. What I've realized, what I've noticed even more, like I've been shedding this all my life. I've been shedding the negative aspects of FE all my life, and I've realized that there's more to shed. What I've recently realized is overtuned FE makes me not myself, and I instead seek to fulfill other people's expectations. Some ways that I do this is I don't say no, even when I want to say no. I don't cancel something I don't want to do. I don't say I can't do that. I don't do what I want. I don't say what I think directly. I often don't say anything, and I instead wait. I say, okay, maybe there will be an easier way for me to say that later, and then I end up just not saying it at all. And the thought I'm working through right now is perhaps a further actualized version of myself is when I really have put this in its place and I use it as a tool. And I am in TE and TINE all the time, and I use FE to further my TINE. That is what I'm exploring. Do you have any comments about that, or would you like to move into INTP?
I'm honestly along for the ride because for me, thinking very deeply about my inferior function is of no use. For me, it's only if I do see something flawed in my behavior, I will look at figuring out why that happened to not do it again.
Okay, let's move into INTJ.
Sure.
For you, extraverted sensing is the fourth function. And it often comes out as sensory perfectionism, getting overly caught up in the present, at the expense, what I wrote here is at the expense of bigger, longer term goals. SE can be useful, but when it takes over, it can become a distraction, leading to sensory overload or focusing too much on perfecting details. It says here, insignificant details. In a nutshell, I wonder what you think about SE being a potential source of inauthenticity that can interfere with longer term NITE.
I disagree with it. It's all on how much control you have, how mature you are, how much experience you have with it. I imagine a younger version of myself would have done that. or weaker version of myself. So I noticed yesterday I've been doing a lot of activities. I've been working very hard, doing a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, and then a lot of executing, and then going out in public into situations that are more attuned to an extroverted person in order to extract data. We've been going out to various social functions, which are very tiring for me as it is. And that also requires a large amount of SE on my point, or at least I'm noticing that that's using up my energy very fast. So I became very tired, and frankly, I don't feel very well today because of it. And that was what I was talking about earlier with the energy drain. So you could theoretically say that yes, that does take away. Obviously, it takes away from an INTE because I'm now tired, and therefore the things I do for the rest of the day might not be as efficient as they would have been. But these are all hypotheticals, and you're always going to be trying to find a balance throughout the day. You could actively think about it, but that would be ridiculous. The very best you can do, in my opinion, is to come up with a way to handle that in the future. So I do have checks and balances set up for myself. These are things that I've set up over the course of my lifetime, and I will continue to adjust or tweak the formula, if you will. So, I'll stop right there because I do have a lot more to say, but I want to make sure that I'm not, because I'll just go to the very end of what I'm thinking, which is really just it doesn't get in the way of the master plan because the only short like I said, it's all about balancing. So it could slow you down for a moment, but you don't know that short slowdown might be necessary because it could theoretically alleviate a much larger sort of car crash later. So I think face these things when they happen. What you don't want to do is ignore it. That I'll tell you, because there were times when I ignored a lot of stuff when I was younger. Again, these are things I learned. I use so what I do is I'll have situation A and situation B, and I just compare the data and say, okay, this one was less efficient than this one, so this is the better option. So option A no longer exists. Now I'm going on option B or plan B.
Okay. Derek, I'm gonna talk through all of SE, and then we'll see if there are any further comments.
Take a quick nap. Joke.
All right. So yes, I've seen the strengths of SE. I've seen your ability to get attention and to seek attention, in, for example, public situations, in a way that would not be natural for me. I wouldn't be like, hey, like in that way. And I think that's an excellent trait to have, and I think this podcast is gonna look way better because you're here.
Well, not yet. Eventually.
Yes, eventually.
Tweaking the formula.
However, that I've seen that it can be a double-edged sword, where I see that we want to move forward in a certain direction, and there is a master plan, there is a way that you wish to go, and the SE details of the moment seems to be a second voice flaring up and also speaking. And
now let me interject here. He's going to continue in just a second. This is coming from an INTP.
Yes.
This is someone who's absolutely unaware of what SE is. From my point of view and from like my understanding of an INTP. So the reason why you're reading all this stuff is to just kind of you're going to give your opinion. I'm hoping here.
All I can share is what I've observed. All I can share is I'm attempting to take the notes here and put it forward in a story format, essentially.
Okay, so this is an observation.
Yes.
Okay.
The general message I'm exploring here is that perhaps our authenticity comes from putting the inferior function in its place. And I've found a lot of value in putting extroverted feeling in its place. And I am proposing the theory, I'm wondering, because I have seen some of what I observe as downsides of inferior SE, where we're trying to do something and the SE is just coming up and these come out.
One more interjection.
Oh, sure.
I think we're going to touch base on this later, and that's why. Because we're leaving out the FI.
Oh, okay.
And FI is my third function, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And when I'm successful or I feel satisfied with the SE, my FI it thanks me later.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes,
and
I've seen
if
that
I don't
too.
do that, then my FI starts to kind of crumble. And then that can have an effect on my NI, which is necessary to move into the next step of TE rather.
Effect on my NI. Is it? Okay.
Because if I'm not introvertedly feeling the way I'm meant to be, then who knows where my mind's going to go, and I won't even trust perhaps my mind, and that can cause chaos in and of itself. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Absolutely.
Before this is like I'm saying it now because we're gonna see it later. It's gonna come up later, and I'm this is me like making a bet. I bet you eventually $5 that this is gonna come up, and we'll see why.
Absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's fine. So I am proposing this theory that, okay, this is the way I've seen it in my life. Inferior feeling was drastically overvalued in my mind, and I use it so much so that I just felt like I was hiding myself all the time. And what I discovered is, to put it in layman's terms, if I just go in there and I talk to someone as if I have no idea what's going to happen, suddenly I'm so free to do it. I would love to do it because I love curiosity. And to put that in MBTI terms, if I put extroverted feeling in its place, and I instead lead with extroverted intuition, which is love of the unknown, then I can meet anyone. I can do anything. I have no fear. That is, in a nutshell, my story with extroverted feeling, and I'm continuing to put it further in its place. I'm exploring how much can I understand and accept that it is something that's always going to be speaking up. And now I'm curious about whether you can hear any parallels there. Is there any value in what I just said, or do you have a different opinion?
It's not even that. It's just I heard different things that were more interesting to me, namely because when you describe NE and that curiosity, it's amazing to me how similar and yet different it is, my NI. Because I do all that stuff you're doing in the real world in my head. And then if I really get in there and I really, like, if I get too lost in NI, that is actually reality for me. And so it's really weird when I snap out of it and realize, oh, I didn't do any of that actually. None of that actually happened. In fact, it's potentially going to occur in the future. Maybe because of TE that I execute myself, make it reality, or it's just something that happens. But I just find it really fascinating, and that's what I couldn't stop thinking about while you were talking. And so
can you try and wrap that up into like perhaps a topic that we would like to talk about?
I mean, certainly. I mean, this is honestly, I would love to have started with that, since it is our what I don't know the actual official names for, not inferior, but our
fourth function.
Well, first function. I mean, NI and NE.
Hero.
That to me
hero
is
first function. Yeah.
The hero first function is more fascinating to me than focusing so much on my fourth function, which it's like. Anyway, just because like you brought it up, that's all I'm saying. So I have no response to what you said after that, because I was in my head.
So what I hear is a request from Derek to have an episode about the hero function.
Yeah,
the first function.
Or many episodes. I feel like that's going to be the main theme between you and I, more so than these other things. So.
Oh well, yeah, it's the main theme of people's lives.
We're going to explore ourselves, or rather our relationship with each other, and then we're going to move on to the other people. Is how I see it. Then we're going to move into the familiar ones, like the IN, or like what are similar to us, like ISTJ or ISTP.
We happen to meet a lot of ISFPs.
Not ISFPs, but yeah.
So engineers, yes. So we're both developers by trade. So we're going to meet a lot of INTPs, INTJs, and then we just happen to meet ENTJs because they like us. We also happen to meet ENTPs because they like us. I don't really meet them very much though.
And my favorite, the ENFP,
The ENFP, yes, we meet
It's
ENFPs.
a secret favorite. Don't tell anybody I said that. Definitely don't tell an ENFP that I said that because I don't want them knocking on my door. But you'll understand why I said that later. But my point is, I see us branching out that way from the most familiar, and then the most what surrounds us the most, to the core, and then the outside core, and then getting into all those unknowns. Because frankly, I can't even recognize an ESFP or an ESFJ, or I mean, frankly, I don't think I have any of them in my life. And so those are very fascinating, but also the least interesting to me. So I'm just pointing out, like, those are things I'm excited about for the future.
Absolutely. So looking forward to the future, that is a great vision there, where we explore ourselves, and then we explore the world.
Awesome.
And summarizing on our podcast just now,
Let's get serious, folks.
we were talking about the introverted function. We talked about, the inferior function. We talked about many things. I think the ball is still in the air about what we think about it. Well, I wanted to send the message that I believe putting the inferior function in its place is the best way to be authentic. I used to think at the beginning, I used to think it's something you conquer and you master. You just go into it and you figure it out. What I think now is trying to do that is also refusing to accept who you are. It's inauthentic. That's what I believe. And that's a message I'd like to really send out here.
And for some reason of a different mind. I'm not so much trying to put it in its place. It is what it is. It is a part of me, and that is authentically me. I don't want to change it at all.
No, yeah.
My belief is I will find the right path, and I will find the right combination of when to sort of allow SE to come out, when to move from one function to another. It's fluid, but also very strict. There's a system that I'm creating, but it's constantly changing. But it's being changed by me. So that is me, in a sense, controlling it and putting it in its place. So you could find as you like to say, a parallel there, or in my opinion, intersection with what you said. But do you get what I'm saying? So for me, it's like, it's all part of my plan. And that's all you're ever going to hear from me. Everything I do is a part of my plan, and you're going to hear that over and over again. But that's my take.
Okay.
And we'll explore that further in the future. I'm foreseeing it.
Okay. Yes. All right. Well, that is this episode. And I can see a future topic being about the hero function. So look forward to that.
Excellent.
That great episode. That's episode 6.